Okay, everyone, welcome to Alaska 7-day coastal brown bears to Denali adventure. I'm Adam Lackner, and I'll be presenting this adventure today. So basically, this tour is really cool. We had a lot of people that they went on our 11-day itinerary, and they loved it. And but we get a lot of requests for less days because that's just the way the American travel model works. Is you want to try and maximize your time off work. And so we've been asked by a lot of customers for less than 11 days, and then that way they could make it. So this is what we came up with. We decided to write this itinerary up with Daniel and the rest of our BrushBuck team up there in Alaska. So I'm going to dive right into this and get fired off, and hopefully you guys enjoy this. Gary. Okay, so just a real quick over the company. We are all business partners here. This is my sister Amber Peters, and that's myself with a crocodile, and there's my brother-in-law Ezra Peters, and we started the company back in 2006, and that was after we all did our military time. So Amber did 6 years service in the Navy. Ezra did 5 years service in the Navy. They were both ITs and floated on what are called Westpacs, West Pacific floats. And then I ended up doing 4 years in the Marines. 2006, we started guiding backcountry clients in Alaska, Montana, Colorado, Idaho, and Arizona. And we ended up going to a guide school in Montana so we could transition properly. Now, 2007, we started guiding in Grand Teton and Yellowstone, and what we're doing now, which is more tourism based. And then in 2012, we started guiding customers in Africa. In 2013, we started guiding in Alaska, and just been developing those ever since, and really enjoying it. It's a lot of fun to do what we do and take people out on once in a lifetime adventures. So I hope when we take you guys out, you feel that our guides are well trained and that we pour our hearts into this business, so that everybody has a fantastic once in a lifetime vacation when they come out in Yellowstone or Africa or Alaska. Here's where our other guides are. You can see this guide standing by the gorilla. That is that's Inea. He's awesome. He's our Tanzania ground handler, and he handles people for Kenya and Tanzania, and then obviously going over to Rwanda to see the gorillas, and Uganda as well. There's some of our Yellowstone guides that are right here. We're checking out some grizzly bear tracks. That's during guide training. And then, of course, Alaska, the airplanes, and then we do Grand Teton and the open air safaris. And then this lion over here on the left, that's Botswana. So we do several destinations in Africa, to include Botswana, South Africa, Kenya, and Tanzania, and then we'll do some Zambia and Zimbabwe, mainly just to see Victoria Falls. But we've got some things on the cusp over there. I just need to develop them, and it'll be a lot of fun. So Alaska 7-day adventure, day one. We meet in the Anchorage area, and we'll grab everybody up and head out to the Caribou and Muskox Farm in Palmer. Now, this moose that you're seeing here, that's a moose calf. He's an adult now. I actually kissed him this year while we were up there guiding, so I had to check that off the guide list to give a moose a kiss. And I've been guiding 13 years, and that's the first one I've been able to lay a big wet one on, so I'm pretty happy about that. The caribou, now what they do is these guys, the difference between the caribou and reindeer is reindeer are basically domesticated and are kept. And so these guys here, they qualify as reindeer, but they're really caribou too. So caribou is the native name for them, and it just means paw, because they paw through the snow to get food. So we head out to here, and it gets us a local feel for the wildlife and gives us a chance to meet everybody and gather and get everything together. And so we go out and see these caribou, and they're real. They don't touch you with their antlers. It's quite amazing how much they watch them for how big they are. They do like their backs scratched because they shed a lot of hair, and you get to feed them, and then they have a whole presentation on how their farm works and how the homestead is. And it's a really cool way to start the trip. Then you go over to the muskox, and they're pretty grouchy, which is they'll come and they come out and posture to you towards the fence. And sometimes the bulls, you know, they do a little bit of bluff charge, but you're behind a fence the entire trip, the entire tour. So you're never in the pen with the muskoxen because they are a bit unpredictable. Totally worth seeing. They have a presentation as well there at the ranch or at the farm. And then we take a scenic drive to Alyeska, which is where we will be staying. On that scenic drive, in the Turnagain Arm, we can see Dall sheep and belugas. And the belugas will definitely pull over if we're seeing any kind of rise out there. And what's cool about the Turnagain Arm is it has the boar tide. So it has a tide that comes in that's literally, you know, it's 2.5, 3 foot high, and it literally comes in nonstop. It doesn't come in slowly like most tides. So here we go. Okay, so lodging in the Alyeska Resort. It's a beautiful property. We head up here to the Alyeska Resort, and there's an aerial tram. So if we end up arriving there early, we can take that up and look at some scenic views. There's also some hiking. The small town of Girdwood has some shopping, kind of cool stuff to see around Alaska. And then there's some cool hiking trails around there too. I mean, I hiked all the way up to this mountain pass and saw this beautiful area and some old mines. And so there's just a lot happening around Girdwood to see. And even if you just hang out at the lodge and just watch, I mean, it's a beautiful place. So Alyeska is where we'll stay our first 3 days. And that's just a good launch pad for us to get down to Seward if people want to go there on their free day to catch a Kenai Fjords trip. They have 10 o'clock departures, which is perfect because it's about a 2-hour drive down to Seward. Whittier is only about 45 minutes tops, and we can zip over to Whittier for tours as well. So Alyeska is a good launch point for us to do anything we need to do, and then also be able to get to Denali. So day 2, bear viewing, we head into Anchorage, and we'll fly out of Anchorage, which is about 35 minutes away to where we'll be going. And then we'll fly, it's about a 2-hour flight down to Katmai. Now, this trip is primarily built to see Katmai National Park and the bears at Brooks Falls. We do have the early offering in June and the late offerings in August. Those will be in Talkeetna Bay. So it's the same flight, only Talkeetna Bay is a shorter flight there, and the bears are more steady, as in open the whole time. You see them from May all the way through late September. We stay at the lodge there on our 11-day trip, and you get to see the bears doing their thing. They dig clams and do some fishing, and sometimes they just lay around. Sometimes they play with each other. It just depends. So the flyout experience, you get to see the 2 volcanoes, Redoubt and Iliamna, which Redoubt did erupt in 2009. Iliamna, I think, was like 1890s. So it's been a while for Iliamna. Now, the bear viewing, our pilot, they usually do about 3 to 4 hours on the ground with the bears for the day. So the main difference in Talkeetna Bay bear viewing versus Katmai bear viewing is the Katmai's, I think, what most people really want to see. And that Katmai section is where, you know, the world, National Geographic, it's all famous. And so most people want to see that because that's kind of what they've been seeing on television, things like, and it is absolutely worth seeing. So to see 10 or 15 bears there fishing for salmon, it's absolutely worth it, and they're huge. I mean, these brown bears, we're used to seeing bears in Yellowstone or maybe interior grizzlies in Denali, and they're only 350 or 400 pounds, which is a good sized bear. These bears average 800 pounds, and some of them get all the way up to, you know, 1,200 pounds and 1,500 pounds, and they're so big they don't almost look like a bear. They just look like a big water ball with a head on them. So they definitely get their amount of salmon. So then after we go on the bear viewing, we will see, here we go. Let's go to the next slide here. So there, you could see that these guests here, we were close to this sow with her cubs. There was probably 4 bears on this beach. And one of the keys we look for on this is to have the bears with the lower tides. So we have taken that into account on this trip. And so having the bears with the lower tide is a good mix, because you can stop and see these bears that are fishing, or they're actually digging for clams here, which we did some of that ourselves. And the clams are great. And then of course there's mussels for them to eat, and there's dead fish that wash up and other things for them to eat as the tide goes out. So you need these big negative tides for the best bear viewing. Brooks Falls, what you're seeing here, this picture on the right, Brooks Falls is the bears fish there the whole month of July. They eat a lot, and we get about 40 minutes to an hour on the platform, and you'll see bears when you're walking out there, and you'll see lots of other bears. Okay, let's move on to the next slide here. Okay, so day 3, free day of activities. We can do fishing charters in Whittier, Alyeska aerial tram, bear viewing, which is, there's nothing wrong with doing a second day of bear viewing. Maybe do the Katmai one day and Talkeetna the next, or doing both. And the reason why you might want to do that is because weather. Sometimes weather cancellations can cause that. So booking 2 days of bear viewing isn't a bad deal. That's why on the 11-day trip, we stay out there a couple days, because just that extra time being out there can really enhance the experience. So Whittier Scenic Cruise into Prince William Sound. Prince William Sound is absolutely beautiful. You go out there, you can see lots of ice coming down to the ocean, and there's beautiful glaciers. And the one catch with Prince William Sound is oftentimes it can be very foggy. It's some of the most beautiful water you'll ever see with the blue, and you'll see sea otters, you'll see stellar sea lions. And I love these trips that go out on the ocean looking for whales. In June and July is fantastic, and early August. So that's right when we're running the trips for whales. That's right when we're running this trip, and whales are there for June, July, and they start to leave about mid-August. So Kenai Fjords National Park tours, that's a cool trip to go out. We got a range transportation, and sea kayaking. So sea kayaking is pretty popular. I've had quite a few guests do that, and they absolutely love it. So here we go. There we go. So there is fishing charter. So they primarily take you out for fishing for halibut, but you'll also catch sea bass and salmon. And the tour price is usually about $250 per person to $500 per person, depending on what you're doing. You can do fishing charters that take you out to on the inland. You're not doing ocean fishing, so you'll be on the river. And being on the river is really nice, like the Kenai River. And so that's where you'll fish for mainly salmon on the interior. You're not going to be catching any ocean fish if you're on the rivers, unless you're right kind of where the ocean meets the rivers. But generally, the Kenai River fishing is for salmon, and they're coming in to run, and that really doesn't start till mid-June. So by the time you're there in late June and July and early August, they'll be running really good. So limits are caught often, but not always. So catching 2 halibuts, pretty normal. Catching a couple rockfish, that's pretty normal. And so that's mostly what they're going to go for. And these captains, when they take you out, they're really good, because they take you out, and they have been fishing for quite a while, like that year. So generally speaking, where they catch fish, they're talking with other captains, and they're all trying to help each other out. So There we go, Alaska day 3 activities, scenic ocean day cruises. So you can see how close they get you on these trips to the Tidewater glaciers. And so those Tidewater glaciers coming off, that is unbelievably beautiful. And of course, you see the whales. You can see whales like this one here. You can see orcas. You can see Dall's porpoises. You can see harbor seals, stellar sea lions, bald eagles. You're not going to see any golden eagles down by the coast, but lots of sometimes puffins. Now out of Whittier, I've never seen puffins, but we see puffins out of Kenai fjords. There's also the great narration. The narration on the tours, they do a really good job of the history, really good job of the geology, and of course the wildlife they interpret, and also some Alaska history. Now you can book these tours out of Whittier or Seward, which I highly suggest these if you only have, a day to see. You're going to cover more country on these boats than you do in kayaks, but that depends on your activity level. If you're more of an active person, I would highly suggest doing the more active activities, and then you get, a little more out of it. So another one is Glacier Hikes. It's super popular. This was right up here with the sled dogs. People go on it and they just love it. So generally you only hike a couple miles, sometimes 2 or 3 miles, but going over the ice, your guide safely makes sure he has the right equipment. They have right communications. And so safety is their number one priority. And then of course fun comes second on that deal. And these here, to go see that and hike on a glacier, I highly suggest it. I've done a couple times myself, and I really enjoyed it. So the prices, it depends, $250 per person to $800 per person, depending on whether you want a helicopter in or whether you want to combine it with a sea kayak. It just depends, and that's where you got to talk it over with the tour operator and come up with what you want to do and what matches you. All right, so day 4, Alyeska to Denali. This is a commute day, so we'll just stop and let people shop. We'll have lunch in Talkeetna, where they had a mayor that was a cat. No kidding. It was a Stubbs mayor cat. So he was pretty famous. He had like 100,000 people that liked him on Facebook. So he's no joke. Stubbs mayor cat. So Talkeetna, it's a small trapper town on the Susitna River. And the Susitna River is a huge river that drains the southern slope of the Alaska Range, a good portion of it. And it flows right next to town. And there's the Denali National Park Visitor Center there, because Talkeetna is kind of the climbing capital. And so that's where climbers launch. So they fly out from Talkeetna usually, and then they fly up and get on the glacier, and they'll launch from there to ascend the top of Denali, which is the tallest peak in North America. Here we go. So lodging in Denali Bluffs Hotel or similar. So there's quite a few lodges like Denali Bluffs in that region. And the reason why we like to stay there is because it's real centralized. We can get picked up there for our activities. The restaurants, after a long day, it's nice to have restaurants close so you can just get a bite to eat or get room service. And that's one of the main reasons we stay there. We've stayed in other places that were more remote, but you find yourself commuting to restaurants and you find yourself not being able to be picked up for activities very well. And so these here, that's one of the reasons why we stay in these lodges here, is they're well centralized. So it makes it easy for everybody, and they're really nice. I mean, the rooms are great, the service is great, and restaurant on site, and it's just a really good launch pad for us. So a free day of activities. That's day 5 in Denali area. So you can do guided hiking in the Denali region, Denali Glacier Flight, Denali Glacier Flight Seeing, which I highly suggest, because if the ceiling is off and you can see the mountains, I mean, flying in, you can see these people are just head over heels. They love it. And ATV adventures, you can do those as well. They go out on the Stampede Trail, and that's out where Chris McCandless, he ended up passing on. They made a big movie. Sean Penn made a movie about it, where he goes out to that Jeep and just kind of lives the free life, and he ends up passing on out there. Well, the ATV adventures and the Jeep trail rides go out that way. So let's see here. You'll be able to see where they travel. Now this here is probably, depending on who you talk about, bears and seeing the peak are probably the highlight of people's Alaskan vacation. So seeing Denali, if it'll clear off like this here, looks like a fall time, maybe October, November. You can see this caribou still has his antlers and he's cleaned off. So that means you're definitely past September, and that is, to see it like that is just incredible. So Denali is 20,310 foot, tallest mountain in North America. Difficult to see in the summer. A lot of times in August we don't see it. July, you got to be lucky, but you can see it. And then, of course, in really April, all winter's the best time to see it, all the way up until June's when you start to get really, it'll start to cloud up quite a bit, mid-June, late June. So Denali National Park is just over 6 million acres. So it's about really, what, 3 times the size of Yellowstone, and that makes it just a beautiful big park. Now, a few things about this park: they do allow subsistence use, and that subsistence use is for locals. And so day 7, adventure, Denali National Park. Lots of wildlife: Dall sheep, caribou, interior grizzlies, moose, and golden eagles. So this here is a Dall sheep, and they are way up high a lot of times. So in June is one of the best times to see them, that late June, when they haven't quite gone up into higher country. And so they can be close to the road. A lot of times, like around Polychrome Pass, we'll see them. The caribou, we'll see caribou depending on when you get there, but we will always see caribou. We usually always see about 3 or 4 interior grizzlies, and wolves can be seen too, especially if they're denning in that area. So if they den in the Adolph Murray area where he studied them back in the 20s and 30s, we see them almost every time we go. But last year they didn't den there. 2019 they didn't den there either. So they've been a little hit or miss. Moose, we always see moose. We usually see about 3 or 4 moose, and then of course we'll see several golden eagles. Now caribou, I'm giving them a little special attention because they really are a key piece of Alaska. You know, it's they're the most populated animal in Alaska. You see them all over. I guess large mammal, they're the most populated. And so there's about 2,500 to 3,500 in Denali. They primarily feed on lichen. They'll feed on grasses. They'll feed on sometimes willows and things like that, but the most part it's lichen. So longest terrestrial migration on Earth. So that's the porcupine herd. They migrate into the Alaska National Wildlife Refuge and over into Canada. They really never stop going. It's 1,500 miles each way. These Denali caribou, they do not migrate as far. Generally speaking, their migration is roughly around 300 miles based on radio collar data from the scientists in the park. So, okay, so the last day, Denali to Anchorage. We'll do a goodbye breakfast. We'll sit down, enjoy each other's company, and then we'll head off to the Denali sled dog presentation. And so Denali National Park is the only national park with a sled dog team. These sled dogs are mutts. They are bred based on ability. So if one female has a high ability and another male has a high ability, those are who they breed. And then of course they maintain a strong line. These dogs are meant to pull weight. They can pull about 100 pounds per dog. So if you have 10 dogs, you can pull 1,000 pounds. So they resupply the research scientists that are in the park in the winter. They resupply. There's a couple cabins back in there in the winter, And so they resupply those as well. And their trail is on the National Historic Registry. And so they're a part of Alaska. Sled dogs are really a big part of Alaska. And you feel that when you're up there. The dogs match up, and it's one of the oldest relationships known to man is the dogs in the north, specifically in the north, Greenland, Alaska, Canada, from the Inuit. And they would feed them fish and use them to get around on the ice all winter long, to hunt, to move their camps. And basically life with the dog was a big part of life in Alaska all the way up until the last 100 years. So seeing that and seeing that they're still using it traditionally is really cool. And the presentation from the National Park Service staff is fantastic. You get to walk around the dogs. You can see, here's one of our guests. She's petting the dogs. You get to walk around with in the kennel where they keep all the dogs and get to pet them, and you get to see their old collars, and you get to see all the name tags that are where they retire them, and they give them to people down here in the lower 48 to just let them live out their days once they've done I think it's about 7 years of service. So that's pretty much it. For the 7-day, mainly is focused around bear viewing and in Katmai and Talkeetna Bay, which is Lake Clark National Park, and focused around Denali. And then, of course, the free days in there to see things while we're doing it. So this tour can be seen at our website. Right now, we can give 15% off, and we look forward to hearing from you guys. I hope you enjoyed this, and there will be more to come.